All right, West Virginia takes on Texas Tech, 3 o'clock Eastern kickoff this Saturday. Texas Tech is -7.5, total 68. If you want to see which one of these picks on this video that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for my college football tier package bets on my website. And the link for those bets is in the description section below. Now, the Texas Tech Red Raiders have hit a bit of a slump here recently. They lost 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and they gave up 35 points a game during that stretch. They're also facing a West Virginia team on the other side who scores 39 points a game themselves, and they're coming fresh off a huge win against Baylor this past week. This West Virginia offense is also in the top 30 in the nation right now in total yards per game. When it comes to the total, West Virginia saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. Meanwhile, Texas Tech went 5-1 to the over in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward West Virginia plus 7.5, keeping this one close, over 68. Next ball game, it is going to be Rice taking on Louisiana Tech. That's going to be a 3 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, Rice is -3.5 on the road, totals 58 and a hook. Now, the Owls of Rice, they've struggled moving the football this year. They actually rank 102nd in the country in total yards per game. They're also facing a Louisiana Tech team who loves to throw the football. The Bulldogs are actually throwing for over 300 yards a game through the air. La Tech's also coming fresh off covers against the likes of UTEP, Clemson, and Stephen S. Austin. Now, total-wise, 5 out of La Tech's last 6 outings did get over the number. Meanwhile, Rice went 5-1 to the over in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward Louisiana Tech plus 3.5, over 58 and a hook. Next ball game, it is going to be Ole Miss taking on LSU, 3:30 p.m. East. The LSU Tigers are -2, total 66. Now, LSU has played some pretty bad defense over the past few weeks. They allowed 75 total points in their last 2 games. They're also facing an undefeated Rebel team who loves to pound the football. These guys are rushing for over 270 yards a game on the ground. But it's not just all offense for Ole Miss. This Rebel defensive unit is allowing only 17 points a game. And when it comes to the number, Ole Miss saw their last 2 straight get over the line. Meanwhile, LSU saw overs this year against the likes of Florida and Southern University. I'm going to lean toward Ole Miss plus 2, over 66. Next ball game, it is going to be UCLA taking on Oregon. That's going to be a 3:30 Eastern start time. Now, Oregon's -7, total 69 points. Now, the Ducks have, had trouble slowing down the passing attack this year. They actually rank 113th in the nation in pass defense. They're facing a UCLA offensive unit who does a nice job of slinging it themselves. They're throwing for nearly 300 yards a game through the air. When it comes to scoring points, these guys are averaging 34 points per contest. Now, total-wise, UCLA saw their last 4 straight get over the number. Meanwhile, Oregon saw 4 out of their last 5 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward UCLA plus 7, over 69. Next ball game, it is going to be Texas at Oklahoma State. That'll be a 3:30 Eastern start time. Texas is -6.5, total 63. Now, the Longhorns are averaging 37 points a game, and they actually do a nice job covering the point spread. The Longhorns covered in 5 out of their last 7 games. They're facing an Oklahoma State team who actually does a poor job of stopping the pass. These guys are currently in the bottom 10 in the nation in pass defense. They also allowed 33 points a game on average in their last 3 outings. When it comes to the scoring, 5 out of the Cowboys' last 6 did get over the line. Meanwhile, Texas saw overs versus the likes of Texas Tech and Texas San Antonio. I'm going to lean toward the Texas Longhorns, -6.5, over 63. Next ball game, Boston College taking on Wake Forest, 3:30 p.m. East. Wake Forest is the 20-point favorite in this one, total 62. Now, the 5-1 Deacs are one of the better covering teams in the nation. They failed to cover only 1 time this year. They're also averaging like 1,000,000 points a game, and they throw for just about 300 yards per contest as well. They're facing a Boston College team who's got a terrible offense and no running game. When it comes to the total, BC saw unders against the likes of Clemson, Virginia Tech, and Rutgers. Meanwhile, Wake Forest saw their last couple of games stay under the line. I'm going to lean toward Wake Forest minus 20, under 62. Next matchup, Memphis taking on Tulane, 3:30 p.m. East. Tulane's minus 7, totals 56. Now, Tulane should be able to take care of business here today on Saturday. They have a super sharp defense, and they rank in the top 10 in slowing down the pass. They're also one of the best covering teams in the nation right now. They're 6-1 against the spread in their last 7. They're facing a Memphis team on the other side of things who's actually on a 2-game skid themselves, and their defense is kind of in chambers. They're in shambles. They allowed 32 points or more in 5 out of 7 ball games this year. When it comes to the total, no real surprise. Memphis is currently 6-1 to the over. Meanwhile, Tulane saw overs versus the likes of USF and Southern Miss. I'm going to lean toward Tulane minus 7, over 56. Next matchup, BYU squaring off against Liberty, 3:30 p.m. East. BYU is minus 7 on the road. Total is 59. But despite being the touchdown favorite on the road here, the Cougs are on a 2-game skid, and they failed to cover in their last 5 straight. Now, BYU's also had a real tough time slowing down the run. They're in the bottom 20 in the country in rush defense. They're facing a Liberty offense on the other side who actually runs it for over $180 a game themselves. The Flames are also 6-1 on the season, with their lone loss coming against Wake Forest by just 1 point. Of course, Wake Forest is a quality opponent. You know, that's a team that on any given day can beat almost anybody in the country. Wake Forest is a good program, and Liberty, they were right there with them. Should have beat them. Anyway, total-wise, 3 out of Liberty's last 5 got over the number. Meanwhile, Brigham Young went 4-1 to the over in their last 5 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Liberty plus 7, keeping this one close, over 59. Next matchup, Purdue at Wisconsin, 3:30 p.m. East. Wisconsin is minus 3, totals 51. Now, the Badgers did lose 3 out of their last 4. They played some pretty bad defense in those losses. Matter of fact, Wisconsin allowed 34 points or more in all 3 of those L's. They're taking on a Purdue team who throws it better than a lot of other teams. They're chucking it for nearly 320 yards a game. Purdue's also in the middle of a 4-game winning streak. When it comes to the total, 5 out of the Boilermakers' last 7 did get over the number. Wisconsin also saw their last 5 straight get over the total as well. I'm going to lean toward Purdue plus 3, over 51. Next ball game, it is going to be Northwestern at Maryland, 3:30 Eastern start time. Now, Maryland's the 13.5-point favorite at home, totals 50 and a hook. And I'll tell you this much, Tua's little brother loves to throw it around the yard. Of course, that's Talia Tungavaloa. The Terps are throwing it for over 300 yards a game. Now, they're facing a Northwestern team who's scoring only 17 points a game, and they actually have a tough time running the football. And when it comes to the total, I'm really not sure Northwestern can score enough to help put this one over. They're also 4-1 at the under in their last 5. Meanwhile, Maryland saw unders against the likes of Michigan State, Michigan, and SMU. I'm going to lean toward Maryland minus 13.5, and the under 50 and a hook in the tight window. Next ball game, little action for you. I'm talking about Western Michigan taking on Miami, Ohio. 3:30 Eastern start time. Miami's minus 6, totals 44. Now, the Red Hawks play some pretty tough defense, and they're actually amongst the better teams in the country in stopping the run. They also covered this year against the likes of Kent State, Northwestern, and Cincinnati. They're facing a Western Michigan team who lost 4 out of their last 5. They covered the point spread only once during that span. Now, the Broncos' biggest problem is their offense. They're actually in the bottom 15 in the nation in total yards per game. When it comes to the total, the Broncos went 3-1 to the under in their last 4. No real shocker there. Meanwhile, Miami 6-1 to the under for the whole year. Kind of some rare unders for these MAC teams. A lot of overs in the MAC conference, by the way. But this game, we're leaning the other way. I'm going to lean toward Miami, Ohio, -6, under 44. Next ball game, not sure if it's on our big screen or not behind us now. It's Marshall taking on James Madison, 3:30 p.m. East. JMU is the 13-point favorite, totals 52. And even though the Dukes are the better team on paper, technically, I don't think they're going to push around Marshall. Both defenses on both sides are equally as stout. As a matter of fact, Marshall is allowing only 17 points a game, and they have the number 2 rush defense in the entire country. Now, they're facing a James Madison team who's beating up on, the likes of Middle Tennessee, Norfolk, and Texas Southern or Texas State. And, it was Texas State. And they're actually coming fresh off an outright loss to Georgia Southern last week, where they gave up 45 points. Now, total-wise, I'd actually look for more of the same here. The Dukes are 5-0 to the over since September 3rd. I'm going to lean toward Marshall +13, keeping this one close, over 52. Next ball game, it is going to be Georgia Southern taking on Old Dominion, 3:30 p.m. East. Now, Old Dominion is -2.5, total 67. And the Monarchs of ODU, they're going to have a tough time slowing down Georgia Southern. Old Dominion's 97th in the country in total yards allowed per game. And, of course, they're facing a Georgia Southern offense who throws for nearly 375 yards a game. They're actually in the top 3 in the entire country in passing. When it comes to total, the Eagles saw their last 2 straight get over the total. They've scored 30 points or more in all but one ball game this year. Meanwhile, ODU saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Southern +2.5, over 67. Next ball game, it is going to be Florida International taking on Charlotte, 3:30 p.m. East. Charlotte's the 14.5-point favorite, total 60. As bad as FIU is, well, Charlotte has no business laying 2 touchdowns here. They're horrible at running the football, and their defense is allowing more yards a game than any other team in college football. They're facing a Florida International team who actually covered the number in 2 out of their last 3. Covers against the likes of Texas San Antonio and New Mexico State. When it comes to scoring, all 3 of those FIU games I just mentioned stayed under the total. Meanwhile, Charlotte saw unders against the likes of UAB and Florida Atlantic. I'm going to lean toward FIU +14.5, under 60. Next ball game, it is going to be North Texas taking on Texas San Antonio, 3:30 Eastern start time. Now, UTSA's -10, total 70. And even though they are the double-digit favorite, the Roadrunners of UTSA, they've had significant troubles covering the number this year. They failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. They're also giving up like a zillion yards a game. They're facing a North Texas team who has little problems moving the football themselves. They're averaging over 36 points a game, and they're actually in the top 10 in the country in total yards. When it comes to the number, the Mean Green saw their last 5 straight all get over the total. No real shocker there. Meanwhile, 5 out of UTSA's last 7 ball games got over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward North Texas +10, over 70. Next matchup, it is going to be Vandy taking on MIZZOU, 4 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, Missouri is -13.5, totals 53. And even though their offense stinks, Mizzou's played some incredibly tough defense this season. They actually have a top 25 pass defense. They're facing a Vandy squad who's one of the worst throwing teams in the nation. Meanwhile, defensively, Vanderbilt's giving up nearly 40 points a game. When it comes to the total, 5 out of Vandy's last 7 did get over the line. Overs against the likes of Ole Miss, Northern Illinois, and Wake Forest. I'm going to lean toward Missouri, -13.5, over 53. Next ball game, it is going to be Arizona State squaring off against Stanford, 4 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Stanford's the 2-point favorite, totals 55.5. Now, Stanford covered in their last 2 straight, and that includes an outright victory over Notre Dame last week. They're facing an Arizona State team who doesn't have a good offense. They're actually 101st in the country in total yards per contest. As a matter of fact, the Sun Devils allowed 30 points or more in their last 5 straight. Now, total-wise, Arizona State saw overs versus the likes of Washington and USC. Meanwhile, Stanford went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. I'm going to lean towards Stanford -2, over 55 and a hook. Next ball game, Hawaii squaring off against Colorado State, 4 o'clock Eastern start time. Some powerful offenses in this one. Colorado State, they are -5, totals 46. But despite being favored at home here, the Rams are certainly having one heck of a season, but in a very bad way. They're just 1-5 straight up in their last 6. They're also averaging just 12 points a game for the entire year. They're actually second to last in college football in scoring. They're facing a Hawaii team on the other side who's actually been really good against the point spread here recently. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 ball games. Covers over the likes of Nevada, San Diego State, and Michigan. When it comes to the total, Hawaii's 5-1 to the under in their last 6. Meanwhile, Colorado State's 6-0 to the under for the entire season. I'm going to lean toward Hawaii +5, keeping this one close, under 46. Next game, Florida Atlantic taking on UTEP, 4 o'clock East. FAU's -4.5 away from home, totals 50 points. But for a team being favored by 4.5 on the road, the Owls haven't been all too great. They lost 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and they covered the number only once during that time. Now, their defense is also having a tough time slowing down the run. They're facing a UTEP team who got the W in 2 out of their last 3. They performed pretty well on offense. The Miners averaged 33 points a game during that short time frame I just mentioned. Now, this UTEP defense also does a real nice job defending the pass. They're allowing just 199 yards a game through the air. And when it comes to the total, 5 out of UTEP's last 7 ball games stayed under the number. Meanwhile, Florida Atlantic's 5-2 to the under in their last 7 themselves. I'm going to lean toward UTEP +4.5, under 50. Next matchup, Arkansas State taking on Louisiana, 5 o'clock Eastern start time. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns are -6.5, totals 52. And the Cajuns are 4-2 against the spread this year, and they play pretty good defense. They actually held their opponents to 21 points or less in 5 out of their last 6 ball games this year. They're facing an Arkansas State team who lost 5 out of their last 6 themselves. And they do a real bad job running the football. And when it comes to the scoring, Arkansas State saw unders versus the likes of Southern Miss, Old Dominion, and Ohio State. Meanwhile, the Cajuns on the other side, they saw their last 3 straight stay under the total as well. I'm going to lean toward Louisiana -6.5, under 52. Next ball game, Southern Miss taking on Texas State, 5 o'clock East. Southern Miss is -2, totals 44. Now the Southern Miss Golden Eagles? I know it's the Eagles. Is it the Golden Eagles? But anyway, Southern Miss, they got the W in 3 out of their last 4, and they've been fairly solid on defense. They're taking on a Texas State offense who's dead last in the country in running the football. Now, when it comes to the total, Texas State's 4-2 to the under in their last 6. Meanwhile, Southern Miss saw 3 out of their last 5 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Southern Miss -2, under 44. Next matchup, it is going to be San Jose State taking on New Mexico State, 6 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, San Jose, let's try to get that out. Come on, Brock, spit it out. San Jose State, -21, total 42. And even though the Spartans have one of the best defenses in the country, I actually do think they're going to struggle with this 21-point number. They actually have one of the worst rushing attacks in the country on offense. They rank in the bottom 15 in running the football. And if you think they can exploit New Mexico State's secondary through the air, just keep in mind, the Aggies have a top 30 pass defense. It's like one of the only things they do right. Now, as a team, New Mexico State actually got the W in 2 out of their last 3 ball games. When it comes to the total, 5 out of the Aggies' last 7 outings did stay under the number. Meanwhile, San Jose State, they're 5-1 of the under in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to lean toward New Mexico State plus 21, under 42. Next game, Fresno State taking on New Mexico, 6:30 p.m. East. Fresno State is laying 11 points on the road, totals 41. And I am not so sure the Bulldogs are good enough to lay double digits on the road. They're 1-5 against the spread on the season, and they stink at running the football. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, rush defense is the strength of this New Mexico program. They're actually in the top 30 in fewest rushing yards allowed. The Lobos also covered this year against the likes of UNLV, UTEP, and Boise State. When it comes to the total, 4 out of the Lobos' last 7 did stay under the number. Meanwhile, Fresno went 3-1 to the under in their last 4. I'm going to lean toward New Mexico plus 11, keeping this one close, under 41. Next ball game, Mississippi State taking on Alabama, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Bama's the 20.5-point favorite, total 61. And I'll tell you this much, a pissed-off Bama team is not a team you want to go up against. They're already averaging 45 points a game. They're in the top 10 in total yards, and they are going to be overly focused after losing a tough one, a close one to Tennessee last week. Now, they're facing a Mississippi State defense who struggles slowing down the run. Meanwhile, offensively, calling these guys one-dimensional is an understatement. The only thing they can do is pass the ball. And I'll tell you what, you're not going to be successful airing it out 60 times against this Bama secondary. It's not a good formula for success. Now, total-wise, Mississippi State saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the total. Meanwhile, Bama saw overs against the likes of Tennessee, Arkansas, and UL Monroe. I'm going to lean toward Bama minus 20.5, over 61. Next ball game, Boise State taking on Air Force, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Air Force is minus 3, totals 47.5. Now, Air Force rushes for more yards a game than any other team in college football. They rarely throw it, run every play. Meanwhile, defensively, they are tough to move the ball against. The Falcons actually have a top 5 pass defense. Now, Boise, on the other side, they're one of the worst throwing football teams in the nation. They're throwing it for only $152 a game through the air. The Broncos have also failed to cover him 4 out of their last 6. When it comes to the total, the Broncos saw unders versus the likes of UTEP, Tennessee Martin, and Oregon State. Meanwhile, Air Force saw 3 out of their last 5 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Air Force minus 3, under 47.5. Next ball game should be a good one. Don't overlook this game. If this game's available in your market, you may want to think about watching it. I'm talking about Minnesota at Penn State, 7:30 p.m. East. Now, Penn State's the 4-point favorite in Happy Valley, totals 44. But I do think the Lions are going to have a tough time getting the W again this week. They failed to cover in their last 3 straight already, and they've been fairly lackluster on offense. I think you're going to see a lot of Penn State fans calling for Drew Aller, to play quarterback. They're definitely not happy with Clifford. And it's certainly bad timing for bad offensive play because Minnesota has one of the best defenses in the country. They're allowing only 11 points a game, and they're actually in the top 5 in pass defense. Now, total-wise, Minnesota's last 3 straight stayed under the number. Meanwhile, 2 out of Penn State's last 3 stayed under the total as well. I think Minnesota should at least be able to keep this one close, if not win it. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota plus 4, under 44. Next game, Texas A&M taking on South Carolina, 7:30 p.m. East. Now, the Texas A&M Aggies are minus 3.5, totals 45. And even though they are favored away from home, the Aggies lost their last 2 straight, and they're simply not moving the ball very well on offense. These guys are 110th in the nation in total yards per game. They're also facing a top 20 pass defense in South Carolina. Now, as a team, the Gamecocks won their last 3 straight. They held their opponents to 20 points or less in all of those victories. When it comes to the numbers, South Carolina saw unders against the likes of Kentucky, Georgia, and Georgia State. Meanwhile, Texas A&M's 5-1 to the under themselves. I'm going to lean towards South Carolina plus 3.5, under 45. Next ball game, Central Florida taking on East Carolina, 7:30 p.m. East. The Central Florida Knights are minus 4.5, total 65. Now, the Knights are on an absolute roll right now. 4-game winning streak, top 5 in the country in total yards. They're facing one of the worst pass defenses in college football on Saturday. East Carolina is 117th in the country in stopping the pass. They also failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 ball games. Now, total-wise, 4 out of the Pirates' last 6 outings got over the line. Meanwhile, UCF saw overs against the likes of Temple and South Carolina. I'm going to lead toward UCF minus 4.5, over 65. Next ball game should be a good one. Kansas State taking on TCU, 8 o'clock East. TCU's minus 3, totals 55.5. And not only are the Horned Frogs undefeated this year, they failed to cover the point spread only 1 time. They're gaining over 525 yards a game on offense, and they're scoring 46 points per contest. They're facing a K-State team who has one of the worst passing offenses in the Big 12. These guys are throwing for only $158 a game. 2 out of the Wildcats' last 3 outings did get over the number. Meanwhile, TCU went 4-1 to the over in their last 5. I'm going to lead toward TCU minus 3, over 55 and a hook. Next ball game, Colorado taking on Oregon State, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Oregon State's minus 23.5, totals 51. Now, the Beavers are doing a really nice job covering the point spread this year. They covered in 5 out of their last 7, and they do a solid job running the football. Now, unfortunately for Colorado fans, the Buffs have arguably the worst rush defense in the game right now. They're allowing nearly 260 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, offensively, on the other side of the football, Colorado's averaging only 14 points a game for the entire year. Now, the Buffs did go 4-1 to the over in their last 5. Meanwhile, Oregon State saw overs in 4 out of their last 6. I'm going to lead toward Oregon State minus 23.5, over 51. Next contest, Pitt taking on Louisville, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Louisville's minus 1, totals 56. And even though the Cardinals are the slight favorite, it actually feels like Pitt's the better team here in this spot. They got the W in 3 out of their last 4. They do a real nice job running the football. They're facing a Louisville team who lost 2 out of their last 4. And they gave up over 34 points a game in those losses. When it comes to the total, the Cardinals saw overs in 3 out of their last 4. Meanwhile, Pitt's last 4 straight all got over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Pitt plus 1, over 56. Next matchup, Utah State taking on Wyoming, 9:45 East. Wyoming's minus 5.5, totals 42 and a hook. And even though they are favored at home, the Wyoming Cowboys have one of the worst offenses on the West Coast. These guys are actually in the bottom 10 in throwing the football, and that's bottom 10 in the entire country. Now, they're taking on a Utah State team who has a top 25 pass defense, so pretty much throwing the ball is out of the question for Wyoming in this one. And when it comes to covering the point spread, believe it or not, Utah State got the job done in 2 out of their last 3. Covers against the likes of very good football teams in Air Force and BYU. Now, total-wise, the Aggies are 5-2 to the under for the whole year. Meanwhile, Wyoming saw unders versus the likes of Air Force and Northern Colorado. I'm going to lean toward Utah State plus 5.5, under 42 and a hook. Next ball game, Washington, Cal, 10:30 East. Washington's the 8-point favorite away from home, totals 57. Now, the Huskies throw for more yards a game than any other program in college football. They're also scoring over 42 points a game. Kind of amazing because, Michael Penix at Indiana was really not a prolific quarterback. He can do no wrong in Washington. Now, they're facing a Cal defense who struggles defending the pass themselves. Meanwhile, as a team, the Golden Bears took the loss in 3 out of their last 4. And they were held to 17 points or less in those losses. When it comes to the number, oddly enough, Cal saw overs against the likes of Arizona and UC Davis. Meanwhile, Washington is a staggering 7-0 to the over for the entire season. They may put this one over themselves. I'm going to lean toward Washington -8 over 57. With that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final breakdown for the video. It is going to be San Diego State taking on Nevada, 10:30 p.m. East. Now, the San Diego State Aztecs are -6, totals 36 points. And somehow this terrible San Diego State offense is averaging fewer points a game than Nevada. Nevada can't move the ball, but somehow San Diego State, they are averaging fewer points a game than the Wolfpack. The Aztecs are scoring only 18 points a game, and they're in the bottom 10 in total yards per contest. They're facing a Nevada team who does a real nice job defending the pass. You know, don't let the record fool you. They're actually in the top 35 in the country in pass defense right now. Now, 3 out of the Wolfpack's last 4 stayed under the number. Meanwhile, San Diego State went 4-1 to the under in their last 5. I'm going to lean toward Nevada +6, under 36. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. I like West Virginia +7.5 over 68. Louisiana Tech +3.5 over 58 and a hook. Ole Miss +2 over 66. UCLA +7 over 69. Texas -6.5 over 63. Wake Forest -20 under 62. Tulane -7 over 56. Liberty +7 over 59. Purdue +3 over 51. Maryland -13.5 under 50 and a hook. Miami, Ohio -6 under 44. Marshall +13 over 52. Georgia Southern +2.5 over 67. Florida International +14.5 under 60. North Texas +10 over 70. Missouri -13.5 over 53. Stanford -2 over 55.5. Hawaii +5 under 46. UTEP +4.5 under 50. Louisiana -6.5 under 52. Southern Miss -2 under 44. New Mexico State +21 under 42. New Mexico Lobos +11 under 41. Alabama Crimson Tide -20.5 over 61. Air Force -3 under 47.5. Minnesota +4 under 44. South Carolina +3.5 under 45. UCF -4.5 over 65. TCU -3 over 55 and a hook. Oregon State -23.5 over 51. Pitt Panthers +1 over 56. Utah State +5.5 under 42 and a hook. Washington -8 over 57. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Nevada +6 under 36.